championship game, 13 million. Just now the game was bad. Second half, you probably you got off it, but that is on CBS. That's a horrendous 20 million for the Virginia Texas Tech game. That is a team that's undefeated. That you figure be some juice. They've been around for a long time, and only 13 million people watch. You know what it tells you? It tells you right now people are not in sports rhythm. Super Bowl 90 million, much less than normal. The NBA playoffs in October were a disaster. Baseball can't draw flies, or didn't. And now you got the NCAA, and the golf was terrible. Steve Torrey's with us. I'm sure he's got his thoughts. We'll talk about the game too, Steve. That's a bad rating. You want to chalk it up to the environment, not a competitive championship game. Well, if you do that, well, I'm going to tell you what happened on Saturday night when they had a great game of all time. 12 million watched it. Ratings were not good in college basketball in the tournament. Have not been good in sports for a long time. Your take on that first. Go ahead. Let me hear.
I mean, I am surprised. Now, the bad start probably contributed to it, but it doesn't sound like even if it was tied at halftime, you would have had a major number, right? It doesn't appear that way. I mean, the semifinal Saturday night was a game for the ages, and it stunk. What, it got 12 million, you said?
12 million.
Yeah. So that really does surprise me. That's disappointing. I do think what you say is true, that, we're sort of out of our rhythm right now for whatever reason. Now, you and I aren't, I don't think. I mean, we've been there from the start, but, the general public maybe is consuming it in different ways or just not consuming it in the numbers that we're used to. I don't know if that changes as things, as we creep back to normalcy, but I don't know. That's a number, especially coming off Saturday with a team trying to complete an undefeated season that really flat out is flat. It stinks.
We talked to Steve a lot during the game last night, and he both felt at 11-1 that Gonzaga was in huge trouble. Steve, they never just got off. They never got off the mat after they took that right hand. Let's talk about that first. Go ahead.
They really didn't. I mean, 9-0 out of the gate, and Baylor, from start to finish, looked like obviously was the better team. I mean, much more physical. I just didn't think that Gonzaga could compete. It kind of looked like Gonzaga was facing like 5-on-6 the whole night. You know what I mean? That's what it looked like.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Yes.
They were completely overwhelmed. And, the thing I think that we lose sight of, we all did, not everybody, but I think you and I particularly, I mean, I know I did. I sort of, started forgetting about Baylor a little bit during late in the year. Now, all year they were still 1-2. And remember, they were supposed to play during the regular season. It would have been sort of interesting to see had they, maybe they wouldn't have been in on the spotlight last night, because who knows what would have transpired if Baylor had beaten them earlier in the year if they had played that game. But, there was a lot of anticipation. They were viewed as the top two teams in the country all year. But Baylor, when they were undefeated, and then they had the COVID stoppage. And when they came back, they barely beat Iowa State. It was like a 5-point win. Iowa State had like 2 wins in the conference. It was the worst team in the Big 12. And then they lost to Kansas. And, then they got picked off in the Big 12 tournament. So, like, in my mind, I kind of just sort of forgot them as a very good team. And then they really got their footing after the Big 12 tournament. They played great in the NCAAs. And obviously the last two, they took it to a much higher level. And, they were probably much better than a lot of us had thought, and might have been the best team in the country. Well, certainly was the best team in the country after the dismantling last night of Gonzaga. It's crazy, but you kind of forgot about them a little bit.
You did. You kind of did. Now, we had a big argument. My buddy John DeClerc has texted me throughout about how I owe you an apology. I said that this year there was no excuses. I don't want to hear a word. They got the best team, win a championship. And you have defended few. I went to the point where I put Don Munson on just to spite you, to right. talk about Gonzaga before a few got there.
I think our disagreement was more about, like we had a big disagreement about who was responsible for building the program. I thought you unjustly got on Few a little bit, but I can't sit here and disagree with you. I mean, it's a huge disappointment. They had a year where they went wire to wire, went undefeated. They did everything they could outside of the conference. We know the conference is weak. They tested themselves as much as they could, and they bludgeoned just about everybody. West Virginia was the closest game, single digits. Suggs was hurt a lot of that game, but they passed every test, and they survived the UCLA game. And maybe, I heard you a little bit earlier today, you didn't give them a lot of credit for that UCLA game, but UCLA was a much better team, obviously, late in the year. They did take out Alabama. They took out Michigan, and they beat, a Michigan State team that late in the year took care of Illinois and Ohio State and Michigan, so that was a pretty good Michigan State team, although a lot of people could say that the Big Ten failed, so I get that. But I think it's a huge disappointment, but I think in the big picture, that Baylor was, Gonzaga was right up there. I'm not going to be one of these guys that's going to say they totally choked and they were overrated. I mean, I can't go there. But, I think they were good enough to win a national championship, but Baylor was better. Simple as that on the one night. And they probably, if they played a series, I don't know if Gonzaga maybe would have got one in a best of 7. That's how good Baylor is.
That we underrated that. So do I have an apology, Chris?
Well, I don't know what exactly am I apologizing for, because I'll stand by the whole thing about who built the program. That one I'm right on in my mind. But what do I owe you an apology for exactly?
You think that I've had it in for Gonzaga? I don't give them enough credit. Blah blah blah. Steve, 21 years. They're in the tournament every year. They're 0-2 in the final, 2 Final Fours. They didn't play well 3 years ago against Carolina. They got blown out last night. Would you agree that Gonzaga, in your eyes, has underperformed in NCAA tournament play? Yes or no?
Well, I can't say if you want to justify it in championship games that they've underperformed. I guess I could give
overall they've only been to 2 Final Fours.
But here's what I'll say: they've gone to in the last 4 years they've been to 2 championship games. They've been to the Elite 8 4 times in the last 6 years. They've been to the Sweet 16 6 straight years. It's kind of hard for me to destroy the program. And I know you could say it's based on the fact that their conference is weak and they get a free pass to the tournament. And I guess that's fair, sure. But that's a pretty good track record. So now
they have underperformed from their seed 14 of the last 17 years. Bill Zimmerman gave me that statistic.
Yeah,
first thing this morning.
I think there's some merit to that, but you would also agree some of the seeding is kind of misleading. I mean, to some degree. I don't know if I'd go that crazy about that. I think your biggest argument is, this was their best chance to win. It was a lot of hoopla. They were undefeated. They were crushing teams. I mean, they completely dismantled USC, which opened up a lot of the eyes in the skeptics, and they fell flat. But maybe part of it is that I don't want to sort of give in to the argument, but I do think Baylor was a superior team, and that a lot of us, didn't give them enough credit up until it was almost too late. I think Gonzaga was good, a very good team. But
so I do not get my apology.
I don't really think that. I think we could agree to disagree. How's that? Is that good enough?
Oh, very good, Steve.
All right.
And Steve last night did a wonderful job. I was all revved up for the NCAA tournament, and he led with Sam Darnold at 6:00, which I
did. Well,
understand.
I mean, not really. It was kind of a combined.
Here it is. Steve is the NCAA tournament guru. He's the college basketball voice. Him and Tom Byrne here on the great Sirius XM.
That's right.
And here it is at 6:00. He's telling me about the Jets when we all knew it was going to happen. Trading with Carolina for a 6th-round pick with Sam Darnold. Steve, the championship game is in an hour and a half, and you're coming off a classic on Saturday night. You haven't been out all weekend, and you're telling me about the Jet-Panther trade. Really?
No,
straight. Play the hits, as you like to say.
Yeah, no, but that was the hits, and I think you're throwing it out in a very misleading way. I jumped off with the game itself, spoke about 5 minutes on Darnold, and spent the rest of the show on the tournament, and got calls on both. But it was tournament dominated, and that was the freshest news, and it was thrown in there with a mix with the championship. See, I choose to dive into some other things when you might have been a little bit of a one-trick pony yesterday with the tournament.
Very good, Steve Torrey. He'll be with you at 6. We'll continue on Mad Dog Unleashed. We come back right after this.